to the Manitoba Junior Hockey League show, episode 1. I'm Dave Anthony, and today we're joined with Kevin Pauls and special guest Darnell Duff. Now, before we get into a number of topics around the Manitoba Junior Hockey League, here's a little bit about what's going to happen. Every other week, we're going to jump on and we're going to talk about the world of the Manitoba Junior Hockey League. We're going to talk about the positives, we're going to talk about some other things that need to work on, but really, we're here to highlight some of the amazing teams, amazing people in this amazing league because we really do love it. And we're really thankful that we get this opportunity to share with you some of our thoughts. And we're really excited to talk about the teams of the Manitoba Junior Hockey League. So, with that being said, let's jump right into the number one story in the Manitoba Junior Hockey League, and that's the Selkirk Steelers. Number one, 2 weeks in a row in the power rankings, number one in the CJHL power rankings. And Kevin Pauls, we've seen this before. But does this feel different to you than it did last year with Selkirk, or is this similar to what they did last year, getting off to such a hot start?
Well, it's a testament to Hudson Friesen and what he's done up there in Selkirk. And yeah, last year they went on a 10 or 11-0 run and really got out of the gates hot. And I think we're seeing some of the same similar roadmap towards this season. You look at the MJHL website as an example, and all of the top five scorers in points, goals, and nearly assists are dominated by the Selkirk Steelers. So whatever they've done through training camp, whatever systems they're running, have proved to be a tough task against some of the teams they've played against. And they've got off to a really good hot start. And, credit to them for doing that. And credit to the players, though, because you still have to execute. I don't care who you're playing, whether it's top of the standings or bottom of the standings, you still have to go out and put the puck in the net. And they've done that in spades.
Yeah, but let's just say it too. Like they haven't had the toughest schedule to start. I mean, they are 6-0. They've scored 43 goals. That's beyond impressive. They have a plus
Mhm.
33 goal differential after yesterday's 13 goal outburst against the Winnipeg Monarchs. But I looked back over their history, and strong starts have just been new to them. Last year, they started 5-0. They had 23 goals for and a plus 16 goal differential. The year before, they were 1-4 and scored only 8 goals. And the year before that, they were 0-3, 1-1 and scored 13 with minus goal differentials. So it is new to them, other than last year. But I think strength of schedule plays into it, doesn't it? I mean, they're kind of beating up on the teams they should.
Yeah, context is important. You can't ignore that. Obviously, if you're playing teams that don't find themselves at the top of the standings as the year goes on, but you have to make the best with what you have too, because as we've seen with Selkirk, no matter how well you start the season off, it's about being in that playoff contention come February, March, and they haven't found themselves in that conversation. A few years back, they were a couple points within shouting distance of the Niverville Nighthawks and ultimately lost out in that battle. So this is a way, okay, you've accrued some success to this point. How do you sustain that when everybody else starts tightening their screws? You have to find a way to keep pace and exceed those expectations.
I don't know, Darnell, do you think that this is something that they can sustain? I don't think they're going to be scoring 43 goals in, the 6 game segments going forward. But to you, does this feel a little different from last year, or do you think that they're going to kind of do what they did, rise, and then kind of level out a little bit?
It's kind of honestly crazy, in my opinion, how similar this year is. The start of this year is to the start of last year. 10-game winning streak. They had 46 goals through those first 10 games last year. This year, as you mentioned, 43 in their first 6, and just completely dismantling teams, putting up a 13 on the scoreboard earlier this week. But strength of schedule, 100% has to play a factor. Now, I'm not taking away from this hockey club. They have some really good top end talent, getting Rohan Guevara back. You saw Babbage go off, Griffin Crone as well. This is a good hockey club. I'm interested to see what Ethan Sawyer can do between the pipes. Of course, they have Hudson Honey, who's a 16-year-old hockey goalie. So it's an impressive start. There's no doubt about it. They've done this now 2 years in a row. They have the Norman Blizzard a couple of times over the weekend, and then it starts to get a little bit tougher against the Steinbach Pistons. It's going to be interesting to see if they can translate early success to success down the stretch, because of course they're not going to be able to keep up with this pace. I think this is a good hockey club, but I'm sort of reserving judgment until I see when their schedule gets a little more beefy.
Well, yeah, I mean, like we saw it last year too. They were off to that 5-0 start. Then they followed that up with a 5-0 run where they scored 24 goals and had a plus 17 goal differential, and then it went off the rails from there. Like, and it wasn't a steep decline. It was just kind of a steady progression of having issues with either scoring or giving up goals. It was just something that kind of slowly built and eventually covered them up. And the Steelers here are a great example of moving into the next topic that we can discuss. And that's just with how many young guys are having impacts already in the Manitoba Junior Hockey League. I mean, you mentioned Guevara, Darnell. He's an '07 and he's got 18 points. Crone's an '06. He's got 14 points. But you look down the road, Brody Green and Steinbach, he's a 2007 born player. He's leading the team in points. They got that LOI Robert out of the Winnipeg Blues system. I know Tyler Sears super high on him. He's got 7 points already. Crosby Harrison for the Swan Valley Stampeders. He's an '08. Trevor Hill from the Terriers. He's an '08. We can go down the list. But Kevin, this Manitoba Junior Hockey League, it used to be the land of the giants where you needed, 8 20-year-olds if you wanted to compete. And I don't think that's the case anymore. I think it's a young guns league now, and we have some incredible talent that is here in the here and now.
Well, with the changing scope of things in the Canadian Junior Hockey League, with the NCAA opening up and the WHL has now taken on a different shift as well, I think it's going to be much more difficult, especially in terms of player procurement. We've discussed this at length, you and I, about, teams like the Steinbach, Winkler, Portage, some of these bigger centers that find an easier way to get players in. But for, specifically talking about Selkirk, they've got to go out and find these guys, and they are going to get younger. All the AAA leagues are probably going to be feeding into the Manitoba Junior Hockey League a little more consistently now, and they're going to have to rely on this young skill that's coming up. And I think it's sort of exciting to see the opportunity for these kids to have a platform to go play.
It's not the bigger issue going to be then keeping them here beyond 1 or 2 years? Like, I don't think we'll ever see, or it'll be rare to see. I shouldn't say we'll never see. I think it'll be rare to see a 4-year guy. I think it's going to become more increasingly rare to see a 3-year guy. It might be 1 or 2 years in this league. And Darnell, is that an issue, or is that something that we as a league can kind of be very proud of, that we're advancing guys at a young age?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an issue and an aspect you hate to see young talent go, especially when you see these guys having such great success at 16, 17 years, even 18. You'd love to see what they can become when they're 19 and 20. Of course, trying to lead you to a championship. But on the other side of the coin, the MJHL can be proud because these top players, these top young talents, and that's a testament to the younger generation of how much work they're putting in to become elite players. It is tough, especially when these 16s and 17s are going up against 20-year-old, basically grown men at that point, and they're holding their own and really dominating. So I think the MJHL can be proud, and the organizations in the MJHL can be proud, because you have to recruit these players, and many of these players have opportunities to play elsewhere, and they could do so, but they're deciding to stay home in many cases and represent Manitoba. And sure, it sucks when some of these top players leave after 1 year, but I think it's just what's going to happen moving forward. We're always going to get that next generation of top-end talent. I don't see them going anywhere. Just unfortunately, they may not be here for as long as we hope they would be.
Kevin, does that help with the parity in our league? I mean, we talk about, some teams, you can't necessarily build a dynasty with the same guys year after year, but this gives an opportunity for a Winnipeg to reload on the fly, or a Selkirk team to reload on the fly here, even starting in the year. Is this an opportunity for teams to kind of get off the ground quick year after year and maybe not roll over bad years if there is a bit of a down year? Think of like Verdun. They missed the playoffs last year. They were able to rebound now and load up a little bit, so they're looking like a powerhouse. Is this good for the league parity wise, having guys maybe only stay 1 or 2 years?
I think ultimately I like the parity, because then it gives everybody kind of an opportunity to retool and remain competitive. And I think it puts the GMs and coaches on the hot seat. We've mentioned player procurement already, and you look at how hard it is to go out and find, because there's players scattered all over the US within Canada and obviously everywhere else in the world too. So to go find these players, it's about connections. It's about your network of scouts out there and how these organizations can bring all of their tools to bear. And I think they are going to have to lean on a lot of the AAA leagues, especially in and around Winnipeg and Manitoba. And I think you might see that regionally, whether it's, for example, the Steinbach Pistons and Niverville Nighthawks will rely on Eastman, and the Winkler Flyers, for example, have a pipeline to the Pembina Valley. So I think that's going to remain consistent, and it's also going to be about how far your reach is throughout the rest of the hockey community, going and finding those players and broadcasting it. And I think that's partially what our job is too, while we're sitting here discussing it. And the MJHL has done a good job of starting to broaden their voice as well. And I think it's going to be all of our part, as well in conjunction with the teams, to showcase that this is a place where you can come play competitive, good hockey.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. Like, this is really good hockey, and whether it's 20-year-olds or whether it's 16-year-olds, I know a number of teams that have 09s. It's been a really incredible start to the season overall. Darnell, just looking at both, the East, or the MGEU East, MGEU West. There's mainly competitive games every night. Yeah, there's the odd blowout or two. We've seen that, but overall, there's a lot of teams that are challenging, especially in that MGEU West. I mean, it doesn't feel like anybody's going to pull away anytime soon.
Yeah, no, it's a great brand of hockey, and that's why fans should be treated. And for the folks who maybe aren't really aware of the Manitoba Junior Hockey League, it's a brilliant brand of hockey. It's only getting faster, which makes it so incredibly enticing to watch. Goaltenders are getting better. As we mentioned, the skill is pretty much off the charts. And from these young guys, like, this is a really fun brand of hockey to watch, to broadcast, and just to be a part of. Like, even coming to watch practice on a daily basis and seeing what these guys go through to get ready for a weekend. Not the average fan probably doesn't know what it goes into. They think you just show up on a Friday or a Saturday night, lace up the skates, and go to compete. That's not the case, and you and Kevin know that probably more than anyone. There's a lot of stuff that goes into getting ready for a hockey game. These guys are from all over the map. Canadians, Americans, the odd international player. I know the Kings are going to welcome back Havril Simchuk here in the next few games for the club. But just, they're here for one reason, and that's one reason only: to put on the skates, to show why they are an elite player. And I wish and I hope that we can just continue to engage with the fans and keep them a part of this great game.
Well, I think we will, and we should say that Darnell is actually joining us from Kings practice right now, so that's really cool. He's got the Kings going through their paces in front of him as he talks with us now. As we continue on with this kind of train of thought, gentlemen, sticking with the MGEU East, MGEU West division, still early days, so I think it's kind of unfair to mark one division stronger than the other, but early indications are the East is going to be kind of a harder road traveled for some teams to get into the playoffs. But the West is really interesting too, because they're right there. But I did some math yesterday, and there are two teams in the West. And again, it's really early days. There are only two teams in the West that can claim victory over a team in the East. Meanwhile, in the MGEU East, every team's got at least one win against a Western opponent, except for one that hasn't played a Western opponent yet. I don't think that really says anything. I was just pretty happy to do some math and figure that out. So I don't think MGEU East versus MGEU West is that big of a deal anymore, but it's still pretty cool to look over the stats. Kevin, is it jumped out to you one way or the other early on? Again, we're what, 5, 6 games in?
I mean, it's awfully hard to say, but our job is to throw out those crazy Hail Mary guesses. And, I think the East is going to be extremely tight. I know the Winnipeg teams are obviously going to be in tough, let's be honest. But at the same time, with teams like Selkirk dominating the East, Steinbach, Portage, Niverville all looking really strong. The Winkler Flyers trying to find their footing currently, and will have a really tall task against Niverville, a home and home series this weekend. I think some of those matchups will go a long way to determining some of those factors. In the West, I it's really hard to get a gauge on. In our preview before the season started, there was talk about the Swan Valley Stampeders being a playoff candidate, and I find that extremely interesting. Looking at the standings, my pick of the Norman Blizzard are at the bottom. I think there's a lot of surprises in store for us. And I think, as much as we like to say one might be tighter than the other, I think we might all be surprised come Christmas time how tight each of these divisions are, maybe save for the extreme bottom portions of the standings.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think sometimes we focus too much on the amount of points from each division. We don't necessarily focus in on how stiff the competition is. Darnell, you can speak to this. I mean, Dauphin, Wayway, each with 3 wins. They are atop the MJEU West with 6 points. Niverville, who's only played 3 games, mind you, 6 points. They are fourth in the MJEU East Division. So are we focused too much on numbers sometimes, and we're not necessarily looking at the competition level between the divisions or within the divisions? Are we too numbers focused sometimes?
I think plain and simple, and I get caught up in it too. But I mean, yeah, we're not even 3 weeks into the new season. Like you mentioned, Niverville has 6 points, but they're on that playoff bubble in the East Division. But it is so early. Everybody's going to get the chance to play 58 games, and I mean, both the Kings and Wolverines only have one loss on the season, and they're tied, as you mentioned, for top spot in the West Division. Like I think it's a little bit too premature right now to look at the standings and dictate who is the better division. I mean, the Eastern teams, this isn't a knock on the Winnipeg teams, but that's 2 extra games against those Winnipeg teams Eastern Division has. And I guess you can say the same thing right now with a struggling Neepawa Titans team and a struggling Swan Valley Stampeders team, where teams in the West Division get 2 games extra against those opponents. I mean, I just think it's too early to dictate who's going to be where. We're not even 3 weeks into the season. I think everybody has a chance to compete, win hockey games. But it's too early to think what division is stronger, what division is better. We'll see what goes on in the next 3 weeks. And maybe at that point, then we can decide.
Absolutely. And again, it's really early days, but you look at the Manitoba Junior Hockey League just announcing their monthly awards, the MJHL Players of the Month. The RBC Player of the Month goes to Rohan Guevara, 14 points in 5 games. The Alaska Anchorage D1 commit, absolutely on fire to start the year. Safe Work Manitoba Defenseman of the Month, Zhenya Miles of the Steinbach Pistons, 6 points in 5 games. He's big, he's strong, he moves well, sees the game really well, and he plays in all situations. The McMunning Yates goaltender of the month goes to Ryan Vellon of the Portage Terriers. He is sensational. And I mean, 3 games, 3 wins, under one goals against average. He's got a .99 goals against average. That is incredible. Save percentage .968, and he had a shutout. And he was very good in that shutout. I know, I watched him do it against the Pistons. Fantastic performance by him. The Chevrolet Rookie of the Month, Isaac Souza of the Selkirk Steelers, 9 points in 5 games for the rookie. Very impressive. And then the Manitoba Pork Peak Performer, practiced really hard on how to say that properly, Brody Green of Steinbach, 10 points in 5 games. That's your Manitoba Junior Hockey League Players of the Month. Gentlemen, since I have you here, Kevin, one from Winkler, one from Darnell. Of course, you're from Dauphin. Player maybe in the East, Kevin, that was not mentioned as a player of the month, but kind of stood out to you as you were kind of going through some of the numbers or watching some of the games. Is there a player from one of the teams in the MGEU East that jumps out at you as a player that we could be talking about as a player of the month down the road?
Well, let me bring in my Winkler Fire bias here. Nicholas Goodmanson, I think, is going to be a guy that's going to be on everybody's radar. Obviously, the work he's done in Winkler so far is well documented, but you're going to see the Winkler offense start to really gain its steam here once they get a couple other games under their belt. We've talked about it's a little too early to tell in a lot of cases, but even in Steinbach, you could see real flashes of brilliance there when I visited you guys for whatever game 2 of the season, I think it was. But starting to watch him really gain confidence. He's always engaged in the offense. Great skater, and he has a lot of finish too. So I fully expect Goodmanson to be on the tip of our tongues come next month's Stars unveiling.
Yeah, he is dynamite. But the Winkler offense has had some issues. I know that they've got a few guys that have got some goals, but other than the 8 spot they put up against Wayway, it's something that they need to work on. And I've talked to Matt Mello, and there's no panic in that room. That guy is just level. He has got ice in his veins. He's very a big believer in the process. And I looked at the schedule. They've got, you know, 4 home games coming up. 6 of their next 7 are at the Icon Arena, and he's not viewing this as a must bank points kind of situation. But with Selkirk playing as well as they are, Niverville playing as well as they are, Portage, Steinbach, you know, banking points, and then the Blues breathing down their necks as well. He's a lot calmer than I think maybe their fans are, or Kevin, maybe you are. This is a big stretch for the Winkler Flyers coming up here with a homestand.
100% it is. But the one good thing is, a coach and all the staff that are around these teams on a regular basis have a pretty good handle on things. And I think, what did Winkler lose? All of 8 games in total last year, and then, swept in the second round. So Matt Mello, I don't think, is necessarily concerned about the overall statistics at this point. He's got a real process in mind, and they want to do things the right way. And whether that's, adding things on the defense and figuring out some systems and getting some playing time under your belt and getting everybody, pulling the rope the same way, I think is very difficult, especially in a huge changeover. It's a completely new look there for the Winkler Flyers. So I think it's, adequate amount of time that they're using to adjust here. And I think this test on the weekend against the Niverville Nighthawks, a brilliantly skilled, fast hockey team, well coached, well disciplined, good goaltending. They have a lot of things against them. And I always think the toughest lessons are the best lessons, because the last thing you want is to have some false sense of security as you get into November, December, and then find some things that weren't working as a surprise. And then it's really hard to adjust later on. So I think right now, Matthew Mello has a really good handle on things. And I don't think there's any reason to panic just yet here in Winkler.
Darnell, one for you before we wrap up here with a segment that we're going to do every time we do a Manitoba Junior Hockey League show. We ask Kevin for a player that stands out to him from the MJHL East. Is there a player for you that stands out in the MJHL West that would be considered player of the month? Maybe we will hear from him later on down the road. Player of the week, player of the month. Is there a guy that jumps out to you?
Well, I do want to give 2 of them. I want to start out with the Kings. Ethan Stewart, 5 points in 3 games this year. If he can stay healthy, and I say if because he's battled through injury problems over the last year, but this guy has an elite shot, one of the better shots you're going to see around. So I think Ethan Stewart is going to have an incredible year. And then a shout out to Ben Roulette, coming back from the North American Hockey League from the Wayways-Capital Wolverines. That's a Wolverines team that they score a bundle, and Roulette is going to be in on a bundle. I expect him to have a massive year offensively, especially if the Wolverines are to have success, which I expect them to be. So just as good as I think Ethan Stewart is going to be with the Kings this year, among others, I think Ben Roulette is certainly going to get a nod for a player of the month at some point this year.
Right, in our last minute of play here in the Manitoba Junior Hockey League, episode 1, we're going to give a shout out to volunteers. We're going to do this every time that we do a Manitoba Junior Hockey League episode. So for this week, starting off with one of my favorites, we're going to give a shout out to Mark Plowman, father of Cole Plowman. Mark drives in from Winnipeg to come and do the penalty box and be a part of the Steinbach Pistons at the Southeast Event Center. He's one of those guys that just gives tirelessly, really nice guy as well. And he was so happy when Cole got to spend some time in Steinbach that he just wants to keep giving back. So each and every week, we are going to give a shout out to a volunteer, and we are going to start with one of my personal favorites, Mark Plowman. Kevin Pauls, Darnell Duff, thank you so much for joining us here this week on Manitoba Junior Hockey League, episode 1. I'm Dave Anthony. We'll talk again next time.